In this series of videos, you'll see some of the ways that I use ByAnnie's Stiletto and pressing tool. In the process, you're going to pick up lots of tips for sewing with soft and stable, mesh, vinyl, attaching bindings, and making beautiful projects with a professional finish. Let's get started. Much of the time when I'm making purses and bags, I like to quilt fabric with soft and stable to create a pre-quilted piece of fabric from which I cut out all the pieces for my purse or bag. That's what I've done on this carry-on travel bag that you see on the shelf behind me. I love the quilted look and the stability that the soft and stable gives me. Sometimes though, I don't want the quilted look. I want a more modern, clean, unstructured feel. And that's what I've done on these little eye cases. This is a set that I made to carry either an iPad or an iPad mini or a Kindle, and I wanted a more clean, modern look with smoothness and not the quilting lines. So on these I have to approach it a little bit differently, and let me show you how I do that. This is another one that I made using a little more sweet fabric, and this bag starts with 3 different pieces. You have one piece of soft and stable and fabric that are sewn together for the body of the case. You have another smaller piece that makes the back pocket, and then you have another small piece that makes the front. And so I'm going to show you how I did the back pocket. It will be the same on all 3 of them. You're going to take your main fabric and your lining fabric and a piece of soft and stable that's cut a little bit larger. You're going to take, I do these in 2 steps, so I do the main fabric first, I sew it to the soft and stable, I trim the soft and stable to match the fabric, and then I put my lining fabric on in a separate step. That allows me to get everything lined up and positioned nice and keep my eye on each side as I'm stitching. So I'm going to take my fabric and position it on my soft and stable. I cut my soft and stable bigger so that my foot has something to rest on evenly all the way around. It just makes it a little easier on that first step. I smooth this out, and soft and stable is not a fusible, so I don't iron it in place, I stitch it in place. And because it has such a soft nap, it really hugs your fabric. You could get by without even pinning this. If you look, I can shake it and it's going to stay in place. But usually I'll put a few pins in. And when I do those, I like to put them in facing the outer corners because I feel like that gives it just a little bit of added pressure going to the outside edges to make it a little bit tighter. I don't want to make it too tight. I want it to be nice and smooth, but I want it to be working its way out. Now, normally when I'm sewing something like this, I would prefer to use a walking foot. A walking foot is designed so that it makes all your layers move at the same rate, so that you don't get to the end and have a pucker because your top layer moved faster than your bottom layer. But the opening on my walking foot is so wide that when I do this little 1/8 inch seam from the edge, I don't have good contact with my fabric. So I usually avoid my walking foot. I use my 1/4 inch foot, and this is where my stiletto comes into play. I use my stiletto to make the action of what a walking foot would do. So as I'm stitching, I hold my stiletto at a 90-degree angle, about 1 inch ahead of where I'm stitching, and I just move it along as I go. What I'm doing is holding my fabric in place and keeping it from moving away from my foot. I'm going to show you that next at the machine, so join me there.